Welcome to the search bar, where we're discussing how Google's site reputation update might impact your website. So Google's just announced it's getting stricter on website reputation abuse. And what does that mean? Well, Google defines website reputation abuse as third-party content published on a host site in an attempt to take advantage of the host's already established ranking signal. Basically, Google is just taking third-party content a lot more seriously on your website. So third-party content could be things like white-labeled content or content that comes from another organization that might be duplicate across the web, or maybe even AI content. So I have Melissa here with me today, and we're going to discuss this. So Melissa, tell us, why does Google care so much now about third-party content, and why is Google concerned about this being on your website?
Yeah, well, really good question. Lots of people are asking that same thing. Ultimately, my opinion is that the reason that Google is really interested in this is that there is so much content created around the entire web that they're really trying to cut down on and focus on what is really true, what is really unique, authentic content, rather than it being lots of duplicate content. Some of the things that kind of come to mind on sites that you and I have worked on in the past are like medical sites. Sometimes they can use the same system. Now, this is from literally like 15, 18 years ago, but they would have a medical library of information, of content called Adam. And so multiple hospitals or multiple health organizations would use that same content because you can't really change the definition of certain medical terms and whatnot. And so it was just like kind of an easy reference point to them. But that as an example where you have one source going to multiple different websites, it shouldn't be helping one of those individual websites rank any better. Essentially, Google's just really trying to just cut down on that duplication, and a website that has a lot of reputation or a lot of authority from just automatically being able to rank for something that they might not really be great at explaining or a topical authority in that space.
Yeah, Google's whole purpose is to serve valuable content to users, and Google's really taking this seriously. I think, like you said, there's just so much duplicate content out there, and Google seems to be really interested in the word you said, authenticity.
Yeah.
And Google really wants every website to be authentic and original and share its individual voice, instead of just grabbing some content that some other person that's not even really affiliated with the organization wrote. And so I think that's, well said. Google's taking that really seriously. And so another example I'm thinking of is there's a lot of white label services out there. And I can think, we've worked with financial organizations before, and like wealth advisor organizations, and there's white label services that will actually write blogs for those organizations, and you can subscribe to it, and they will just give you, like 6 blog articles every month, and then they copy and paste those blog articles on their website, except that they're all over the place. There's a bunch of other websites that have it too. So it's not unique. It's not reflecting the unique perspective and voice of that wealth management organization. And Google's not a fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up a really good point. I think multiple points within that. First, let's tackle the fact of what we're getting at as a reputation. What builds reputation? So when you think outside of this, beyond SEO or beyond what happens in search, and you think about why we put trust into certain people within our lives or certain brands or organizations, it really comes down to their reputation. How much do we trust them in those spaces? And so Danny Sullivan, who is the Google search liaison, had given an example in one of his interviews saying, like, when it comes to automotives or like a mechanic, right? Instead of having a white label service that's going to feed or content that he will put on his website that's very generic, when you know that the guy who works behind the mechanic shop, in that shop, is going to be like saying things that are more like, I don't know, much more authentic. To all of that, like, you don't hear his voice in that content, right? It's stripped out. And so the point is that we want to hear directly from the actual person running the business, because that is what authenticity is to them, because that person has the reputation, not this other person who just did some random research to determine, what are the big SEO keywords that people are searching for and how to insert them into all the content. And I think that's where like one side of SEO has gone really far into that keyword abuse. But it's swinging back over into the authenticity and really defining what is that reputation. So there's the reputation of the organization or the people who actually make the organization what it is. Then there's also the reputation of then the brand who can then help other things rank. So it's really this kind of dual game right now. Even though it's called site reputation abuse, there's a dual game of like what they're really trying to go after is the authentic reputation versus the just a granted authority that then can be passed on to other content.
Mm-hmm. And Google seems really more and more interested in individualization, in the unique voice of the brand, but also the individuals behind that brand. And we've talked about this before, but authorship seems to be more and more important to Google. In other words, Google wants to know who on your team is writing these articles, is writing these contents. And that's why, when we work with clients, we always try to encourage them, if they have a blog article system, to have authors, to have author profiles for their team members, to start to build that authority of the different team members. And I noticed this in myself once, and online, one of the things that I will write a lot about on the Blue Compass blog, I talk a lot about is, digital marketing is SEO and website design. And one of my team members the other day did a search about, how long should you go before redesigning your website. And one of the first results, I think it might have been a knowledge panel result, the answer box up at the top. And it pulled in some content that I had written on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the reason it did that is it probably, I was relevant to my team member, but I've written a lot about that.
Yep.
But if you searched for, hey, how much should I put in my 401k every month? And I wrote about that on my LinkedIn, I would never come up because Google knows to associate me and my brand with web design and SEO and things like that. Because for years I've written about it, I've posted about it on social, and Google has access to all of that. So Google really looks closely at authors, at individuals, and Google wants to know what is that person's expertise, and therefore Google will weigh that a bit more in search when that person writes about it.
Yeah, it brings up a really good point too, since you brought up LinkedIn, from a social perspective. Again, kind of getting back to an earlier point when you had so many in there, is when it comes to authenticity, it's figuring out, in social, you can really see. You see who the authors are. You hear from them. There's a lot more video that happens within those social platforms these days. And so because of that, there is an intrinsic value of reputation and trust that gets passed between all of that. That's why influencers are so big right now. And so when it comes to a website and its content, not all content has authorship with it, right? And like you were saying, you do encourage your clients to have that authorship. But I even go a step farther with some of my clients where I tell them, don't just have the profile page, because the profile page can be whatever. You can say whatever on there, but sync it up to your social profiles as well, because that's what's going to kind of validate it. Almost if you think of it as like on X, where you have the verification mark type of thing, like Google being able to see that there is the author profile page on the website, but then also see you're on X, you're on LinkedIn, you're on these other places. It validates that you are a real human first and foremost.
Link to them from the profile page.
Link to them. Or have the icons and link off. So that way, because Google crawls everything that's open, and a lot of social profiles at this point are open. So they're able to see, like, do you write about the same stuff on LinkedIn? Do you write about the same stuff on X? Do you write about the same stuff, in other search platform or social platforms? And then does that validate what you're talking about and writing about on a website?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, that brings us to AI content. So again, Google is taking third-party content very seriously, white-labeled content, duplicate content. Is AI-generated content, like content from Gemini or from ChatGPT, is that third-party content, do you think?
Well, if we look at the definition of site reputation abuse that Google posted, AI content would go against that because it's not created by authors within your own,
In other words,
within your own organization.
AI content does fall under that, you're saying?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
It is an abuse of the policy.
By definition, from what Google is saying.
Yes. Because that's not somebody. One, it's not it isn't a body. It's not a somebody.
Right.
And the AI is not the expert on that topic, right? Like, and this is one thing that I talk about with our teenage boys a lot when they think about AI is still generative, which means it can't give you an answer. It doesn't really know what the answers are. It only knows what the next keystroke, probability of keystroke, or the word is supposed to be in a sentence because of how many other times it's seen it all throughout the web giving that answer. Yeah. So it's just a mathematical algorithm that's producing the answer, not that it knows the answer. So how can AI be an expert in a topic? And then it's that's what third party is. Like, the AI is not like yours. You know what I mean? Most people these days have used ChatGPT or Gemini as a way to create that AI content for them. Well, that's owned by Google or by OpenAI. So that's not owned by your organization. So again, by definition, that's not a first party content. That's third party content.
Well, and AI isn't generating ideas from scratch. It's drawing it from the web. It's
just mathematical
from elsewhere and putting it together. So again, by definition, that is a form of duplicate content.
Yeah.
So Google doesn't outright say, hey, we're going to penalize you if you use AI content. But I would say over the past couple of years, it seems to be inching closer and closer and closer. And I think it's very, very dangerous to have AI write a page of website copy for you. You can use it for inspiration. You can use it to help you refine a sentence. You can use it for things like that. It's a great tool to help you, but you still need to have one of your experts write that content.
Yeah, I have heard of rumors, so we're going to keep it in as a rumor, but I have heard of rumors that had said that there was a website that website created lots of content. The content was all written by AI, as was the author. The author was essentially an AI.
Trying to game the system.
Yeah.
Yes.
An AI persona or person or whatever.
Yep.
And that was something that was caught, and it doesn't rank anymore. So, and that's another thing is, like, again, not only is it third-party content, but if Google's in the hunt for authenticity, AI content isn't that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, there's been so many black hat techniques over the last 25 years when it comes to SEO. And like buying links, for instance, like it's always different. And it seems like, creating a fake AI person, AI generated content kind of seems to be starting to fall within that black hat. And it might work now. It might be a short-term solution, but it's not a great long-term solution. And you never know. Tomorrow, Google could say, hey, we're really going to penalize all AI content. And if you've based your brand and your website on this, it's going to be problematic.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much more we could get into with that, but probably leave it here.
Another video about all the
about all the AI content.
All the AI content. We hope that was helpful for you. Again, we really encourage you, beware of third-party content and be wary of your site reputation. So please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.